This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 84th edition of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with longtime coach Rick Turner. Rick has coached and worked in many levels of basketball. He was a Sonics employee for about a decade. He was a radio commentator, former play-by-play announcer. Rick is the author of the book, If My Name Was Phil Jackson, Would You Read This? What a title. The Anonymous Adventures of an Anonymous Coach. Rick was also basically had a supporting actor role in the 2012 nonfiction book Brave Dragons by Jimmy Ardley, who was the Beijing, China, New York Times chief correspondent at that time. I'm definitely going to ask Rick about his coaching of the 2024 Jamaican national team. My Sports and Stuff show has been around now for over 3 years. I'm doing this as a supplement to my law practice. And you can follow me on Twitter at plslawoffices.com. Most of my interviews are now up on YouTube, and they're also on the Rainier Avenue Radio website, most of them. Well, Rick, we've met a few times over the years. I know your mother-in-law, Sharon, very good lady. I appreciate coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Paul, this is awesome. Thanks for having me. And I know we've talked about this a lot, mostly in the parking lot at Husky Stadium, but it's great to be with you. I can't believe that you actually found 83 other people that were more fascinating than me, but that's okay. To be in the top 100 is great.
Rick, you're being self-deprecating. I would say the list is more chronological than based on preference. So it's just been a timing thing. So all sorts of every interview has been interesting, and it's just sort of a timing thing, and it's also based when someone can come on my show if they want to come on. So
no, it's great. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for doing this with me.
Absolutely. Well, I know one of your family members, and my good friend Chris Davis. I'm gonna go back with Chris for a long time, so it's fun to do a little chat. Hey, Rick, I guess this is my first question. How did you come up with the title of your book? It's a very catchy title for a basketball fan. If My Name Was Phil Jackson, Would You Read This? How did you come up with that catchy title?
Well, I've been swimming in anonymity when it comes to coaching for a while, and part of it was kind of like being a smartass, really. Part of it was like, well, I mean, if my name was Phil Jackson, would you read this book? And then, obviously, when you got the name Phil Jackson in the title of your book, it might show up on someone's Google search if they're looking for something about him. So, I mean, it kind of served a dual purpose. It allowed me to kind of vent a little bit, but also maybe brought my search up a little higher on Google.
Very clever, Rick. Maybe I should retitle my show. If my name was Larry King, would you listen? That's very, very, very clever. I like it. I like it.
That's funny, Paul. You say that about Larry King. Sorry to interrupt, but it's. I kind of thought I was the only Larry King fan left. I was a kid that grew up listening to Larry King late at night, and in fact, I'll tell you a quick story that I was only a listener, but on his last night on the radio, he was on the Mutual Radio Network, and on his last night, I felt like I had to call in, and I did so, and felt pretty honored to get in on his last night of his radio show before he moved over to exclusively television.
It's a cool story. I grew up listening to Larry too, and he's 87 years old. He still has a show going. I saw him like the Aura Network. He does like a couple of day a week shows. So I've listened to some of his, I guess we can call them podcasts in recent months. Yeah. It was really neat, Rick, in your book, and I haven't read all of it. I've read a chunk of it. It was really neat that George Karl, the famous coach, wrote the foreword to your book. He describes you as being a real gym rat. Do you agree with Coach Karl's assessment of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a description that's followed me around for a long time. I like the game. I like being in the gym. I like evaluating players, and I'm entertained by it, and can't seem to figure out a way to get away from it. So yeah, I think that's a pretty apt description.
Rick, in your book, you write about all the different levels of coaching you've engaged in. It's pretty incredible. Community college, high school, semi-pro. You've just seen basketball from so many different angles. And I have a question for you. Who is the best X's and O's basketball coach you've ever encountered? And who is the best motivational coach that you've ever encountered? And I have a follow-up question for you after those questions as well.
Yeah. That X's and O's, it's interesting. I'm going to bring up a guy. I mentioned him in my book. He's an assistant coach of mine with this Jamaica team that I'm doing, and he's coaching in high school right now. And his name's Omar Parker. He's just, from an X's and O's standpoint, he's absolutely brilliant. And nobody knows about him because he's coaching in high school. And he and I were having this discussion, and actually my entire staff, we did a 24-hour broadcast last weekend, and I had my staff on to kind of kick the whole thing off. And, with the recent passing of a couple of local Seattle legendary coaches in Ed Peppel from Mercer Island High School and Keith Kingsbury, who coached for many years at Edmonds Community College, we just kind of talked about the fact that you can be an outstanding coach who has a humongous impact in the lives of both young kids and older kids, men and women. And just because you're not making millions of dollars in the NBA, it doesn't diminish. It doesn't, diminish how good of a coach you are. And, Omar's been brilliant, and, kind of sticking along, that same path. I used to have, a semi-regular meeting with Bob Whitsitt. We'd just go have coffee over in Medina and kind of catch up, and I'd let him know what was going on with me, and he would let me know what's going on with him. And we haven't done it for quite a while, but he, just in picking my brain, asked me the same question one time. And I mentioned Quinn Snyder, who's, as you know, is the coach of the Utah Jazz now. But at the time, I think Quinn was in the D League. And I think Bob, I don't want to say he was in disbelief that I said that, but there was no reason to think, for what Quinn had done up to that point in his career, that I would hold him in that type of regard. But the guy is absolutely brilliant. I think it's been proven with his time with the Jazz, and it's not surprising that two guys that were brought up in the game under Ed Peppel have become so impactful in the coaching world, one at the highest level in the world and one at a more local level, but still the impact and the knowledge and the ability to lead and move people is just the same.
Those are great names. And I, on a personal note, I just want to share with you that I knew Omar's late brother, Chris. He
Right.
was a college friend, great young man who died way too young. And I want to share with you too, this interview is about you, not me, but I want to also mention that Keith Kingsbury is the late uncle-in-law of my sister. My sister Leah married Keith's nephew Tim. So I have
Is that right?
some, yeah. So the couple of people you mentioned are great people, and I have some, I guess we can call it connections or peripheral connections to them. So I just want to mention Chris Parker, Omar's late brother, and Keith Kingsbury, the late CC coach. So who stood out as a great motivator as a coach, whether at the little league level or NBA level? Who have you always admired as a motivator as a coach who really gets a lot of his players or her players?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that you have to be the traditional type of rah-rah motivating coach to get a lot out of your players. That certainly isn't my style. And I've never really gravitated toward those type of coaches. And I don't, I think there's so many different ways to get it done, right, Paul? If you said to come over to your office and meet you to have a discussion about hoops or something, there's so many different ways for me to get there, and
Sure.
I could take a cab, I could Uber it, I could walk, I could ride a bike, I could take the bus, I could drive, I could, and none of them would be the wrong way to get there, as long as I got there and on time and with the ability to follow through with the meeting. There's no right way of doing it. So I don't know. I mean, this is, I guess, my way of kind of punting on the question. I don't know that anyone stands out to me in terms of like a rah-rah type of a motivating guy. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but so many coaches do it in so many different ways. I spent the 2003 season as a consultant with the Washington Huskies, and so I was there every day, and I saw Lorenzo Romar, and that was the year, if you remember, when Nate Robinson hit the half-court buzzer beater to beat Oregon State when the team was down, and then all of a sudden that sort of lit a spark, I think, for that team, and they went on to finish a great year, and then even the next year were even better than that. But I wouldn't consider Coach Romar a motivating type of coach in that way, but he was able, he had a way to reach players and get to them in a way that where they responded and were able to have great success. So again, it gets back to, there's just lots of different ways to do it. I kind of think if you're constantly relying on pumping up emotionally, at some point that becomes sort of deaf. I think it falls on deaf ears at some point. Then all of a sudden when it doesn't work, it's done. You've lost your voice at that point. I think you kind of pick your spots to be motivating in that sort of way.
This is Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Coach Rick Turner, having a fun conversation. Rick, I really enjoyed how you answered my question about who's the best motivator you've seen as a coach. You gave some perspectives, and you mentioned there's different routes, like there's different roadways to get to a home. But let me ask you a follow-up about that.
Mm-hmm.
How about the Bobby Knight in-your-face approach? Are there some approaches to coaching, Rick, that you would just say that goes a little too far?
Well, I would never, it's like telling someone how to be a parent, right? Like if this is the way you do your job, you do you. It's either going to work or it doesn't work. And ultimately, if that's not the right way to get it done, then you're not going to have a job very long. I do think that it's much more difficult in today's world. I don't, this makes me sound like old man, like the guys up in the balcony in the Muppet Show, talking about how it used to be done in the old days. But it does seem to be true that getting into players are just seem to be much more sensitive today, and that seems to be the case. I don't know if it works, then it works, and I think there's some. I think what it comes down to, Paul, is authenticity. I think if it's authentically you, then you can get away with it. And if your players know that you care about them, then they can handle some more coarse language or a more aggressive approach. But if they think that you don't have their best interest in mind, then you're going to have a problem. And that doesn't, that goes the same if you have a subtle approach as well.
kind of willing to extrapolate your answer. You're kind of willing to give a coach some discretion in the best coaching techniques. Kind of what I'm gathering. Hey, Rick, we're going to get into.
Paul, but
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, but the great thing about coaching and the great thing about athletics is it's a results-oriented business, right? I mean, you're getting measured every night. You're getting measured every season, and either the way you do it, shows up in your results, or it doesn't. And so I think ultimately that's what makes it the most fair. When you can just go by and see how it works out for you.
Interesting stuff. Rick, I'm definitely going to get into this interview with your work with the Jamaican national team, but I want to get into a few other topics as well before we hit on what you're doing with that team. Rick, you were able to play basketball, I think, at Lake Washington High School as part of a no-cut policy. And I can really relate to that, Rick, because when I was growing up, there were some teams I made and some teams I did not make. But I've always been a believer, and challenge me on this if you want, that the K through 12 time, in that particular age group, why not make teams more inclusive for kids? Why not figure out ways to get more kids on teams rather than exclude so many from having a chance to participate? Where do you come out on that, Rick? Basketball and sports at the K through 12 levels.
Well, I think what you're referring to was go back to when I was in junior high. I was cut, and then when I was in the 9th grade, the school district passed a rule that said you couldn't cut kids anymore. And had they not passed the rule, I likely would have been cut again. But it also sort of coincided with me going through a growth spurt and getting bigger and taller. And, I was practicing and trying to get better. And I ended up getting better. And I think, kids progress at different stages. They're probably, for most of the people listening to this, they can remember a kid that when they were 12 years old in their area was just absolutely dominant in all the youth leagues. And then by the time they got to high school, he or she disappeared, or they, they went from being the best basketball player in the county to, being 5'7" when they were in 7th grade and 5'7" when they were in 12th grade. So, everyone kind of matures a little differently. And so that rule personally helped me. I think it would be great if there were opportunities for kids to play all through K through 12, like you say. And I think, there are opportunities for them to play. But, there's also something to be said about competition and finding the best 12, basketball players, or the best, 50 football players, or the best, 20 soccer players, whatever that is. There's still room for the kids that aren't in that group to play at a recreational level. That's why there's parks and recs departments. But the benefits that you get from competing and having to outwork the person next to you, and the camaraderie that you get, the discipline that you get, it's not the same when it's at the rec level. I think at the rec level, you should be playing it to have fun and to stay active and to, I think you can still scratch that competitive itch somehow. But I don't think there's anything wrong with real competition at the highest level. You can find it.
Interesting feedback. Paul Schumann, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Coach Rick Turner. Yeah, you kind of got where I was laying that question, and you're right. I mean, it's hard to I guess let everyone on every team, but it just seems to me there's ways to be a little more inclusive. Let me ask you kind of a follow up to that question, Rick, about um, the whole topic of cutting kids from teams. Is Would you go along with a rule change in high school basketball where the games would go from 32 to 40 minutes? In Washington State, I believe the high school games were still 32 minutes. The games would go to 40 minutes, but there would be a policy where each kid on the team needs to get, say, 2 or 3 minutes of playing time in the game. Could you go along with some rules change that would get more kids who are suited up a chance to participate in the game?
Not at the varsity level. I wouldn't. I'd have no problem with that. In the junior varsity or freshman level or C team level. I think at the varsity level, I don't think there's anything wrong with healthy competition, and I've been in youth leagues where the playing time was mandated, and there's certainly some good features to that, especially when you're talking about 12 and 13-year-olds, to give them an opportunity. But the thing is, there are so many opportunities out there right now for kids to find teams to play with that you can't just what's the best way to put it? You can't just legislate that a kid can play for whatever team they want.
Okay, you're making me think more about some of the ideas I'm throwing out, Rick. Rick, I've read Jim Yardley's book, Brave Dragons. I mentioned in introduction. It's a book about Bob Wise's year coaching, or maybe mispronouncing the name of the city, Chauncey Brave Dragons, in the 2008-2009 season in China. You were Bob's assistant, former Sonics coach Bob Wise. I want to ask you, what do you think of Mr. Yardley's book? And as I mentioned earlier, you had kind of a supporting actor role in that story. How did you like the way you were portrayed in the book by Jim Yardley?
Well, first of all, I love the book. I love Jim. He's an awesome dude. He spent the year with us. For those that don't know, he took a sabbatical from the New York Times to write a book. And he started out to write a book about the kind of the difference in culture between U.S. Basketball and basketball in China. And he just so happened his plan was to go from team to team within the Chinese Basketball Association, which is kind of the NBA equivalent in China. And Coach Weiss and I were in Shanxi, which is about 300 miles south of Beijing, in a small little town of 3 million people in China. And he ended up coming to our team and never leaving because it was such craziness. And so that's kind of what the book was about. In fact, he sold the movie rights to that book. And I don't know, I haven't checked in with him lately, but I don't know whether it's gone any further than that, whether anyone is trying to write a screenplay for it yet. But I'm sure that between Brad Pitt and Bradley Cooper, one of them will probably be cast to play me.
I was going to ask you. You just read my next question. I was going to ask you to cast to play Rick Turner. Love the answer. I really enjoyed the book, and I know you a little bit. It was fun to read about your role as the assistant, and there's an interesting story about what happened to you. I don't want to give away the whole book when you were in your book when you were spent some time in China. But one thing I like about that book, Rick, is it gives a reader a chance to learn about Chinese culture through basketball stories, and it really it kind of breaks down Chinese culture in a less textbook way. I'm sure you'd agree with that thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it was an experience that was so unique, and I'm so happy that I was able to get that experience. And it was interesting because I always felt like, well, I could just, if all else fails, I'll just go home. I never felt trapped over there or anything, which made it, I think, a little bit easier. Another thing about it is we really got treated well. So that kind of made it fun. But yeah, there's definitely some cultural things that I ran up against, and that all of us ran up against, that were learning experiences. But I would go back in a heartbeat if given the opportunity.
So looking back, like 12, 13 years later, Rick, you would have no problems recommending to an American player or coach to go and give the China Basketball Association a chance?
Oh, no, not at all. But I don't think it's for everybody. I mean, in fact, I mean, that's part of what the book was about with Jim. And I know I touched on it in my book. We had who I thought was one of the best players in the league, in Dante Smith, who was someone that never made an impact in the NBA, but that was only because of I think timing and situation and circumstance. It's one thing that I learned through this journey, is that there are so many really, really good players who never, just like bands, like there's a lot of great bands that no one's ever heard of. And it's, some of it is just luck. And Dante Smith was just kind of unlucky in his basketball career from an NBA standpoint. He's had a great professional career, but overseas. Anyway, he was with our team. He was one of the best players in the league, and our owner had a chance to sign Bonzi Wells, who had a name and was a former teammate of Yao Ming, which made a difference in China. And Bonzi was a popular player. And so he brought Bonzi in at the expense of Dante Smith, because you can only have 2 foreign players. And our other foreign player was a big man, a center by the name of Olumide Oyedeji. And so, we weren't going to cut him. And so in order to make room for Bonzi, we got rid of the best player in the league. So, coming full circle to your question of would I recommend China to anyone, I certainly would, but you have to have the right makeup in order to embrace that experience, which Bonzi never did. I don't think he ever enjoyed anything about being in China. Maybe he was too far from home. He wasn't very experimental with his food choices. And he was a little aloof when it came to getting to know the Chinese players. And he was a great guy, and I enjoyed my time with him. And this is nothing disparaging to Bonzi. I'm just saying that some people are able to take advantage of a situation like that, and some are just uncomfortable in it. And it just so happened Bonzi was uncomfortable, and Dante embraced it, and his teammates loved him, and we let him go, and he ended up signing in Australia and winning a championship in Australia that same year. And then he's been in Israel, and he's been the MVP over in that league, which is a really good league over there. And so that was our loss. But yeah, great experience, fun experience. I'd recommend anybody reading Brave Dragons. It's really well done, and Jim's a great writer.
Oh, it's a great book. And I thought that the biographical stories that Jim Yardley has in his book are fun to read. And he writes about you, and he writes about Bonzi Wells, and the book really makes you think, and it's a very well written book. Rick, I do want to get real quick question too. I've met Bob Wise over the years. I used to live in the Madison Park area, and he doesn't know me, but we've talked over the years. His wife seems like a nice lady too. Are you in touch with Bob Wise, and how's he doing?
Yeah, he's doing well. I talked to him over the summertime. We talked about, whether he would want to get involved with the stuff I'm doing in Jamaica a little bit. And I checked in on his family. I think they just moved to San Diego. They were living in Denver, and now they're over in San Diego, I think, to be close to their grandkids. He's doing great. And Tracy, his wife, is doing great. And they're fun people to be around. And I couldn't have picked a better guy to spend my time in China with than Coach Weiss. He's just fantastic. Yeah.
Very affable guy. Just seems like a really down-to-earth guy. I remember seeing Coach Wise in the Madison Park, Leshai neighborhoods over the years. He would talk to the fans just like he would talk to anybody else. He just seems like a really, really good guy. We officially got like 5 minutes left. Are you okay if we go a couple extra minutes, Rick?
Oh, of course, yeah. I love talking hoops.
Absolutely. Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Rick Turner. And this interview will be on Rainier Avenue Radio, or part of it will be on. And then we'll also have a YouTube edition of this interview. So, Rick, tell us what's going on right now. You've been announced as the coach of the Jamaican national team. I see various celebrities like Kevin Calabro, Dave Sims, Steve Kelly, Gastineau, Grosby are, I think, part of a fundraiser for your Jamaican national team. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, man, I am so excited about this opportunity. I've been doing basketball camps in Jamaica for over 20 years, and just got to know a lot of the people involved in the local basketball scene down there, and so many former campers that we've turned them into coaches now, and it's become like a second family down there to me. And this opportunity came up. I put a plan together to what I thought I could do to bring the program forward, and they liked the look of it and decided to allow me to take a swing at doing it and trying to. Our goal is to bring the team to the Olympics for the first time ever. Our plan is the Paris Olympics in 2024, and I think we've got the ingredients to do it. But what we lack is funding. And so I thought that I could really try to focus a fundraising effort in the U.S. and Canada, in the specifically to the Jamaican diaspora in the U.S. and people that had a tie to Jamaica, had an interest, whether it be from family ancestry lineage. They're up here now. They just love the country. They love the Jamaica brand, or you love basketball and you want to be a part of something cool, and be a part owner of a team and watch them as they try to make history. And so many people, I talk about what I'm doing, and so many people bring up the Jamaica bobsled team, and it resonates with people, and the brand resonates with people, and Usain Bolt and Bob Marley. It's just a really cool opportunity to do something that can change the lives of people in a real way. And so last weekend we did a 24-hour live stream just to kind of announce to the world who we are, what we're doing, and to invite them to come along with us. And, like your podcast, it's available on YouTube and on Facebook on the Jamaica Basketball Project. We had 24 hours of guests and hoops talk and Jamaica talk, and it was really awesome. You mentioned some of them, but we had John Calipari on, we had Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam, we had Quinn Snyder on, we had Sean Paul on, the Jamaican Grammy award-winning artist, and Mike Silver from the NFL Network was on with Graz and Gas, and Romaro Gill, who's a Jamaican center who played at Seton Hall last year. He's entering the NBA draft this year, 7'3", and was the defensive player of the year at Seton Hall. We had a couple of the reggae boys from back in the 98 World Cup. We had Terry Stotts on. We had Dwayne Casey on. We had Marcus Johnson. I'm leaving a ton of people out, but it was just really a lot of fun to the people that stepped up and showed their support for it and wanted to be involved. And so I would just urge all of your listeners to go check it out. 24 for 24. It's over on YouTube, and Facebook under the Jamaica Basketball Project. And I would also encourage them, if they want to be a part of something really special, to think about donating to what we're doing. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's just going to be a cool experience. And wouldn't it be something, Paul, to say that you had a hand in helping bring a team to the Paris Olympics for the first time ever, and it can be your team, So that's what I'm doing.
It's a neat cause. I love it. It's a neat cause, Rick. It's funny. I actually had a question for you about the Jamaican bobsledding team. I'm familiar with that story. I know Hollywood did a movie on that. Are there any similarities to basketball in Jamaica and bobsledding in Jamaica? Or is basketball just a lot more advanced in Jamaica than what bobsledding was when
I would think
Jamaican
came about? I would think it's definitely more advanced. What they've done with bobsled is remarkable, right? And the marketing behind that, and that they also have a women's bobsled team now, and they've had wonderful success with that. Certainly more success than basketball has ever had. So it's hard to really kind of make that comparison. It's a winter sport in a Caribbean country. So, to say that if you're growing up in Jamaica, that you dream to be a bobsledder, I don't know how many people have that dream. Maybe they do, but there's no snow. I can tell you that for firsthand experience. But I do think there are kids that grow up dreaming of being NBA basketball players, and maybe putting on a jersey with their country's name on the chest of it. And so, I don't know that there's many comparisons or similarities, but if we could come somewhere close to matching the excitement and the marketing that the Jamaica bobsled has come, then I think we'll have a great opportunity to build something special, just as they have.
Rick, wish you only the best, and I hope we can stay in touch a little bit more, and I can learn what's going on with your coaching the Jamaican national team. Really looking forward to it. And there is a famous Jamaican player of Jamaican descent, Pat Ewing. We can't forget that. So
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I have heard of him too, believe it or not. So there are some good hoop players that go to Jamaica. That name Pat Ewing obviously stands out.
We've got 2 in the draft this year.
Oh, 2. That's cool. 2 in the NBA.
Yeah.
Wow, 2.
Yeah.
That's not a bad number. Well, Rick,
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I'd love to talk to you more about all your life experiences, and hopefully you can maybe come back one day on my show. But I want to ask you a final question. This is a question I've been having a lot of high horse asking this question. I'm getting all sorts of different answers.
Yes.
Dave Grosky answered Floyd Merriweather. Dave Sims answered Sandy Koufax. Softy Mahler answered Tiger Woods. All sorts of other names. If you could interview or have an extended conversation with one living sports figure, who would it be?
Well, God, immediately, the one that immediately comes to mind is Muhammad Ali. They didn't call him the greatest for nothing. I mean, just an amazing life story to not only be the best who's ever lived in your sport, but to also, have such an impact socially as he had. It would just be fascinating to be able to sit down and talk with him. And everything I've heard about him was that he was just a really genuine, great person to know on a personal level. I would love the opportunity to sit down with him. He comes to mind immediately, but it's a great question. I'd love to spend a little bit more time thinking about it.
Yeah, no doubt Muhammad Ali. He is deceased now, though. Who would be, let me ask you again, who would be a living sports figure?
So I'm sorry, did I miss
around? No, it's okay. No, you're fine. You're fine. Muhammad Ali is a great name in sports history. Who would be a living sports figure you'd love to have a conversation with or interview? Pick one. I'm going to put you on the spot. Pick one.
Oscar Pistorius. I want
Wow.
to know what exactly happened that night.
That is a great name. That is a fascinating name. I've gotten so many names. I'm going to add that name, Oscar Pistorius, to the list.
I mean,
Love it. Well,
doesn't that make you think, man? Like, there's no way this guy just murdered his girlfriend, is there?
it is like a Dateline story plus. I mean, it's such
Yeah.
a fascinating, horrible homicide story, and I've read about that case a little bit. With my attorney background, I find that case very interesting as well. But what a great name to add that list. Well, Rick, I really appreciate you taking some time to come on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. Loved every minute of it, and let's you and I stay in touch.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, Paul.
You too. Thanks.